It requires long and persistent effort to induce a condition in a human being which will, for a time, intromit him into the greater or lesser soul worlds. And just so it is not easy matter for the inhabitants of those higher and highest worlds to become in rapport with this. These remarks introductory to what follows. After the first great thrill of terror had passed over, I became comparatively calm, and soon lost all consciousness whatever. Not a sensation ever felt before in my life was experienced now, but a new magazine of emotions seems to have suddenly been opened to the depths of my being, and began to usurp the places of the old ones. Some years subsequent to the events now detailed, I read the wonderful experiences of several persons who had experimented with various drugs, De Quincey, Gautier, Bayard Taylor, Dumas Péré, Ludlow, and others, but nothing described by them, nothing described by similar experiences in the Orient, beneath my own observation. In short, nothing I had known, seen, read, or heard of, in the slightest particular, resembled the wondrous and mystical experiences of my soul upon the memorable afternoon. Nothing at all resembled the sensations to which I awoke under the trees near the eastern city. Gradually, the sense of lostness, which for a time possessed me, passed away, and was succeeded by consciousness altogether distinct from either the dream or the ordinary wakeful condition. Not a sensation ever previously experienced, not ever in the very soul vaults of my being, now swept the nervous ocean within to solace, actuate, or annoy, but instead there came an indefinable pleasure sense, a sort of hypersensual ecstasy, by no means organic, but diffused over the entire being. I have every reason to believe that this feeling is always experienced by the newly dead. Persons who have been resuscitated after drowning, suspension by the neck, or asphyxia, all unite in testifying that, so far as their experience went, death was a pleasant feeling, and its joys supreme, even in the specters that may have seen the terrible passing hour. This sensation, like all others, cannot be verbally described. It was as if the keenest pleasures known to us by the body were infinitely prolonged and strung out over the entire nerve sea, instead of a single organ or two. I perhaps convey my meaning to some people better by saying the sensation was akin to the feeling of instantaneous relief from the most excruciating pain, toothache, for instance. I was not, at first, conscious of the possessing a body, not even the ultra-sublimated material one of which we hear so much said in these later days, but a higher, nobler consciousness was mine, namely a supreme radiant soul majesty. My ears did not hear, but sound, nature's music, the delicious but still melodies of earth and space, and all things else seemed to pour into my ravished soul in rich, full streams through 1,000 avenues. The eye did not see, but I was all sight. There were no organs of locomotion as on earth, nor were such needed. My spirit seemed to be all motion, and it knew instinctively that, by the power of the thoughtful wish, it could reach any point within the boundary of the earth, where it belonged and willed to be, but not a single yard beyond it. Let it be here distinctly understood that the condition in which I now found myself was precisely the same as that of the higher class of spiritual beings when they are in the peculiar state wherein they can, for a limited period, and to a certain extent, become connected with this world, wherein they have once lived, and from which they have passed over the bridge of death to the brighter realms of beyond. In other words, I was connected with two worlds, the states incident to the resides of both, at one and at the same time. Distinctively and most clearly does memory retain all the marvelous changes from the pre-state of the auspicious afternoon. What is especially remarkable is the condition was so peculiar that the freed soul and did, after a time, take close notice of material things, even when the same soul gaze penetrated the surface and beheld their essences. The vision was not bound by obstacles which impede ordinary sight. Every object was, more or less, transparent, and one very singular peculiarity of all the bodies, of whatever kind, was this: the trees, stones, hills, mountains, everything appeared as if composed of absolute fire. A certain object I knew, from its shape, to be a large tree with a brown bark, white wood, and green leaves. Yet none of these colors were now, but instead the trunk appeared to be a huge cylinder of gray fire, not in one mass, but in interwoven streaks, all actively flaring upward, and bound together by a circle of brighter fire, the inner bark, which was in turn encompassed by a dull brown band of faintly flickering flame. Each leaf was also nothing but a varied disk of purple and orange fire. Thus it was with all that I beheld. Fire, in some form, constitutes the life of all beings, of whatsoever the nature. Of this I am firmly convinced. These strange sights cause me to reason in this wise: if dull matter is so filled with a divine luminescence, what must be the appearance of a human being? Surely a man must present an astonishing sight. Of a certainty, said I, this must be eternally, and I am now a free soul. Oh, that I might behold another soul than mine, and learn somewhat of its mysteries, and reach the understanding of a few of the deeper things of its nature. Scarcely had this desire, taken from the sense of involuntary motion, took possession, and I felt myself slowly and positively rising in space, at an angle of 80 degrees with the horizon. Amazement! The sensation was not unpleasant, but as the ground receded, apparently, the novelty of the situation produced emotions that most certainly were. It is impossible to describe my feelings, nor shall such an attempt be here essayed. Suffice it, therefore, that I rose to such a height that, judging by the faint gleams of the earth fires in the hills and the indistinct shimmering of the city itself, I conjectured that at the highest point, not less than 5 miles, in a straight line, separated me from the peak of the tallest mountain within sight. Having reached this altitude, I began to descend upon the arm of the triangle, whose base was on the earth's surface, and reached the ground in the neighborhood of a city in central New York, distant from my point of departure not less than 200 miles. Of course, it was impossible to even conjecture either the means by which the journey was accomplished or the motives by prompting the weird power which effected it. But, thought I, whatever be the reasons of my coming, one thing is certain: here I am, and nothing remains to be abide the issue, whatever it may be.